leadership stands up. Anyone can have the easy conversations like you're doing a phenomenal job, you're doing so great. But those hard conversations when you're putting an employee on a performance improvement plan or you're giving an employee a write-up, those are the really hard conversations to have. Welcome to Livestream. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Plains, with my co-host, Jeremy Applegate, the one and only.
The one and only.
Where we teach you how to stream your life. Welcome, Jeremy. How you doing today?
Hey, what's going on? I'm excited about the topic today. It's an uncomfortable conversation, right?
Before we start talking about the topic, though, I wanna talk a little bit about last weekend's NFL games.
Okay.
How do you feel those games were? They were pretty nail biters, right?
Yeah, they were all pretty good games, and they all started out like everybody thought they were going to, and then they ended up like nail biters, right? I mean, who would have thought the Dolphins, and I'm not a Dolphins fan, but who would have thought the Dolphins with a third-string quarterback?
They beat themselves.
I absolutely agree with that. But you know what? The only thing that mattered over that weekend was the boys.
The Cowboys, America's team. I was super impressed with the G-men.
Yes, Daniel Jones.
Yes.
I was really shocked. I mean,
I'll be surprised. Listen, you never know what can happen. This reminds me a lot of when the Giants beat the Patriots in that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think they have that momentum and that good energy, and the coach is very positive. He's very uplifting, and the players love him.
And I think that, this weekend with the Giants and the Eagles, with Jalen Hurts a little beat up,
you don't know what can happen.
I think it's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean, the Commanders beat the Eagles this year.
Yep.
If you remember.
Yep.
So yeah, what is the topic we're going to be talking about today?
I think we're going to be talking about communication today, and I think it's going to be more of how to have an uncomfortable conversation. I mean, everybody talks, and everybody emails and everybody text messages, but I think it's more relevant from leadership to team member, understanding how to work through and navigate those conversations.
Guys, the communication. This is a topic. This is a way of living. It's so important for not only your professional life but also your personal life.
Yeah, for sure.
Getting two people to understand each other, or even a team to understand each other, it is a very big challenge. So I'm very interested of talking about this today.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there are a lot of great managers, and I say manager versus leader because leaders understand how to have these uncomfortable conversations because they can connect and they can engage and they're good listeners. But I think the problem is managers are really bad at it. Like a manager will go in and say, "Listen, you're terrible at what you do. You need to improve in 30 days, or I'm going to cut you loose."
Or else. Yeah, but they don't go look at themselves and say, what type of training processes have you had? How have you been holding them accountable? Did you train them properly? Did they understand you? Because sometimes we're afraid. Like I remember when I used to work for somebody and they're like, "Did you understand?" And I would be like, yeah. But at the end of the day, you really, truly didn't understand.
At the end of the day, you're like, what did we have a conversation about?
Yeah, I mean, when I used to work for Royal Caribbean, I remember there was a brand new software I had never worked with, and I had a training for 3 to 4 weeks, and I had the software training for 2 days. I knew a lot of stuff, but I didn't know everything.
Yeah. But
in order to move forward to become a sales rep, I had to kind of lie and say, yeah, I completely understand it. So a lot of our employees are always like, yeah, I get it. I understand it. But do you really understand it? And if you do understand it, please explain it to me. But it's like you said, a lot of the managers or in people in leadership roles don't go that extra mile to ask the right questions.
And I think, for all the viewers out there and all the listeners out there, I think an important question to ask is, how do you feel you're doing? Because the employee is going to give you information, right? And then you can build that.
So what do you do when they say, "We're doing great"? I feel like, I've come a long way, Jeremy.
Well, explain that to me. Why do you what responsibilities in your role do you think you're doing great? And, let's grade. Let's be honest with each other and let's grade. Give me some self grades. How do you handle the phone? Oh, I'm a 10. Okay. You write it down, you're taking notes, and then you go back and revisit it. Hey, you do a pretty decent job on the phones, but I wouldn't say it's a 10. And this is why. I think really this is where you need to improve. And I think that a lot of leaders and managers aren't transparent. They're like,
They're afraid to have those hard
afraid.
conversations.
don't be afraid.
Because those hard conversations are really, really, it's like when that's where leadership stands up. Anyone can have the easy conversations, like you're doing a phenomenal job, you're doing so great. But those hard conversations, when you're putting an employee on a performance improvement plan or you're giving an employee a write-up, those are the really hard conversations to have. Like, I can personally say that I try to divert from those conversations, because at the end of the day, nobody wants to be the bad guy.
And I think that's the challenge that leaders and managers have, is they have this perception that they're the bad guy having this uncomfortable conversation with somebody. You think these people want to do a shitty job?
No.
Your team doesn't want to do a shitty job.
No, of
they
course
want to
not.
do a great job. And it's our responsibility to sit down with them and say, hey, I'm coaching you, I'm supporting you, and let's make this happen. Now, look, you're going to run into employees that are just bad employees, bad hires. You've talked to them about, not picking their nose 14 times, right? I mean, I'm being dramatic on that, but, and it's time to let them loose. But you have to coach these guys up. It's just like a sports team, You always have to coach your players up. You always have to coach them up. You always have to coach them up. And that's what a lot of people miss.
I feel like one of the most successful things that I ever do when having those hard conversations, I try to build affinity with the employee.
Yeah.
Something that we have relatable, a challenge, a win. And then I go into the reality of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and kind of give them my tips and pointers of the reality is you're not answering the phone properly, or you're not submitting those claims properly. And then you just use communication to put it all together.
Yeah, I use a lot of when I see a situation take place, and I'll sit down with the employee and I'll say, hey, explain to me why you chose to take that path. Explain to me why you had decided to have that conversation that way. And then I would say, okay, I understand why you did that, but do you ever think about doing it this way? And you're like, and then all of a sudden you see this light bulb on top of their head. You're like, man, I could have ended that conversation 5 minutes ago, and I could have left feeling good about myself, and the person on the other phone could have, been happy about the situation. So it's not a you're doing it wrong, do it my way. It's, giving them an opportunity to share, and then, giving them some enhancements, I guess.
Exactly. So one thing that I just heard it in a best man speech, is like, we got to look at each other and be like, is this an Alex and Jeremy problem, or this is an AB problem? And then you got to figure out what the issues are that are ongoing that are causing those breakage in communications.
For sure.
And sometimes you just got to take a step back and either write it down and let it out. Oh my God, this employee did this, blah, blah, blah. And then, or walk. Steve Jobs used to walk around the building when he was having tough conversations with his employees. And he said that was one of his secret of his success, because when you're walking around nature, there's something, enlightening when you're doing that. And the person, when they're walking, they're entertained with the walking, rather than having that, and it's more personalized, rather than having it in an office setting where, there's stress, there's, there might be a little bit of animosity. And by the time you know it, it becomes a more uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he's a multi-billionaire or something like that, so he knows what he's doing. But I would be only worried about that situation because it would be distracting. If I'm walking through the garden of Microsoft, and there's all these beautiful flowers and trees and stuff, and am I really listening to what he has to tell me?
I think you are, because I can tell you why, and it just hit me right now. Last year I did a spiritual retreat, and one of the main exercise they ask you to do is to walk around the garden and tell your therapist or the spiritual coach what you're seeing. We sometimes walk around and we don't know what we're looking at. We're just walking, we see trees. But is it a beautiful tree? Is it a dried out tree?
I'm seeing green leaves.
What color is that car? What do you hear when you see that car?
Okay.
So it basically makes you connect to the environment rather than more than you ever can think, and it eliminates the problem that you're focused on, and it helps you become more grounded on what that conversation that you're having is.
That's an interesting communication technique.
Yeah.
I might have to try that.
You know, and I've done it, and you know, you can even start talking to the employee first and be like, listen, we're not going to talk right now directly about what's going on. Let's do a brief exercise. Let's walk around this facility. I mean, outside. You're not going to do it indoors, and you're going to tell me what you see every time you walk. What are you seeing? You know, we're right across here from KFC, so I'm seeing a KFC. What color is the sign? And by the time you do this exercise, 2 to 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you're not going to be focused anymore on the problem anymore. And your communication ability is going to be a lot better than if you go right away to the problem.
And maybe the receiver, you know, lets their guard down a little bit more, so they're more receptive to the coaching.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
What a genius.
Whoever came up with it was a genius, but it really does work. And I recommend that you do it in every avenue. They say that when two spouses are arguing, the best thing you should do is, you know, step away and take 30 to 45 minutes away. And when you come back, then you can possibly talk about the problem. You know, we tend to become combative and use our reactive mind to fight our point. But sometimes you just got to take that step and, you know, breathe and let it soak in rather than go in attack mode.
There's a reason why there's a saying called happy life, happy wife. I'm just saying.
Okay. No, I totally agree.
Did I switch that around?
Yeah.
Damn. All right.
It's okay. You're sleep deprived.
I am. That's right.
You're a little sleep deprived. But no, I mean, it's so true. I mean, happy. No, you basically give your wife, you know, happy life, happy wife, happy life.
Oh, there we go. That's right.
So
that's right.
You know, but back to communication. So when you're having these hard conversations, you got to sit down and talk to the employee. And a good thing I do is I have them write down what they feel is their strengths and what their weaknesses are, what their opportunities are, and what they're worried about, which are their threats. And then we figure out how we're going to overcome those weaknesses. And you always got to focus on the strength of an employee, because every employee has strengths. Even the worst employees have strengths that you can see if you identify them as a leader.
And leaders need to, you said that perfectly, and leaders, it's our responsibility to identify their strengths. Like they shouldn't have to come to you and say, hey, I am great at opening the door. I am great at whatever they're great at. We should be able to identify that and put them in a role for success.
And one thing I recommend is you definitely got to have the employee or the leader in your department, you know, have visibility of what you're going through and be transparent with them. Let them know, you know, we're having financial issues in this department. And I think transparency that's actually one of our core values is transparency, because it's very important for them to understand what is going on and the reason why we are doing these decisions and why we're committing to change.
Yeah, I mean, in the dental office perspective, you know, they all see that, you know, patients are running in the front door, right? But they don't understand the impact of those patients leaving the front door without scheduling an appointment, without having a comprehensive conversation about treatment, without, you know, fill in the blanks. So
yeah, I love how you just said that, because it's so important. Like most of our issues, you know, with treatment acceptance is communication and lack of education. Just saying those extra 10 words that it might, you know, take you a couple seconds to say might make a huge impact in your treatment acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's relevant. And you know, going back to being transparent, you know, they just assume, like team members always assume everything is perfect and everything is great and everything is good because, you know, they're collecting their paycheck.
Exactly. Most of our patient issues are lack of communication, right? Like if the case is lost, you know, or if it didn't arrive timely, or if there's a billing issue, people are afraid to have those hard conversations because they talk about money. They talk about, you know, a case being lost and now it needs to be remade. Those type of things happen it happens to everybody in every single type of business. Like if you own a pizza shop and you can't get the flour on time, you're going to have an issue making pizza. So it's very important that you communicate to your consumers of what's going on and the issues you're having with your product and services.
I like where you're going with this because, you know, communication is, like we said in the very beginning, like you said in the very beginning, it's never ending. And why is it that a team member, like we've run into situations in the break room, right, where two team members, three team members are arguing, like, I'm not calling her. Well, I'm not calling her. Well, I'm not calling her.
Because like we say, everyone is afraid to have those hard conversations. Nobody wants to have those hard conversations. And as you start evolving and you start becoming a better leader, you're going to hold yourself accountable and be like, why am I not being able to have these hard conversations? And that is the first step to realizing that you're a good leader. When you notice that you're afraid of having those tough conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would put that into they have to be experienced. They have to get that experience to do that. But I think that there's training and there's leadership and there's all that other stuff that goes into that will create that confidence to have that conversation. And I think that, if you're having that conversation, here's my biggest advice to people that run into consumer conflict. Say I'm sorry once. That's it. Because if you continually say you're sorry, I'm sorry, guess what happens to the consumer on the other end? Oh, and they just get more amped and more amped and more amped, and before you know it,
that's a good recommendation.
They're yelling and screaming and carrying on, and then you have that bad experience. So you're like, listen, I talked to Joe Smith last night, and it was terrible. I'm not talking to anybody else.
I think our communication with our patients, or in the service and product industry, it's a lot easier personally. I think my biggest challenge is having those tough conversations with, even amongst our team members.
Yeah.
I've always had a huge problem, and people are like, Dr. Plains, you have a hard problem. You have an issue letting people go. Because I always try to find the good qualities in us and in our employees' efforts. But sometimes, there's times that you got to let those employees go because they're not good for the business.
Yeah, and listen, you're a loyal guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, listen, our retention is great, right? We hardly ever lose people, and I think it's a situation where we found the right people to understand that you're a loyal guy, and that, because I feel that loyalty, I'm going to be loyal to you, and I'm going to bust my ass for you. And I think people should be more like that, to be honest.
Exactly. I love what you just said there. You got to be gracious to them, and you got to show gratitude, because everyone does, everyone goes there and they try to do their best.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
And a lot of owners are very, very hard on their employees, to the point that they build a reputation that no one wants to work for them. So being a leader, you got to be able to have those hard conversations, but you also got to applaud them for their wins and be gracious to them and show them gratitude as much as you can.
I love what you just said, and it put a smile on my face, because we know doctors that just constantly are beating up their team members. Listen, you can get after a team member when they make up or when they mess up, but when they do something great, you better celebrate that.
You got to celebrate it.
You better celebrate.
And a lot of us, we have we're hard to celebrate, because then we're like, oh my God, we celebrate them too much, they might want to raise. So, but it's okay to be able to do that. But you don't need to do a raise. You can do an appreciation event. You can take them out to a team building exercise, which that's part of our goals for 2023. Yep. And we started yesterday. I mean, that was a great event. We had some of our team members there, and they were so happy, and it was just a 2-hour event, but it's a way to show back gratitude and appreciation for what they do.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there's nothing wrong with, there's nothing from a business perspective. Like, listen, if these guys are doing a great job and they warrant a raise, give them a raise, because every time you give them a raise, what are they going to do? They're going to be more productive for you, and then guess what? That's going to help you as a business owner. So, I mean, I would say you guys that are hesitant on giving your great team members raises because, for whatever reason you feel like there's going to be too much recognition, bullshit. Give them a raise.
But you also got to go for a little further with what Jeremy's saying, which is true. You got to also set up clear and concise expectations for that year. Yeah. So, they know what you expect from them, because as we're going to the financial side of things, but with rising wages also comes, rising costs and other issues that come from that in the financial side that can affect the business.
And some people, with respect to recognition, I know we're talking about communication here, but I mean, it's relevant. They don't necessarily need a raise. Like you've said this 100 times. Maybe it's a
week off, a trip to Disney.
Yeah, an extra day off, whatever their circumstances.
One thing that people continue to say, one year I did a 3-day cruise for my Vero Beach office, and it was great team building, and they were so happy because we hit our goals. So sometimes instead of, giving them money, doing like a team building event, like we all go and, share a win together. And sometimes they just want to spend time with you and have a good time, because we spend ourselves in such a stressful environment dealing with so many issues. Whoever thinks that being a dentist is rosy and pink, they're very mistaken. It's a lot of hard work. You know, our man Nate spent the day yesterday with us, and he can testify on all the hard work we do and the patient care that we gotta, you know, offer our patients in excellence constantly. And you know, you can go from one operatory to the other, and you can have an upset patient, and then you go to a happy patient, and you got to do an immediate shift in your personality, because you're going from probably being sad and upset that the patient's not happy to being to a next room where the patient's super happy and giddy, and you can't go to the next operatory feeling upset.
You have to have some chameleon in you, right?
Yeah, and it's constant, and it's constant shifts. Like, I mean, it can literally change within 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and then you got to continue going. So it's not as rosy as people think. So it's a lot of hard work, but I've noticed that's why the personal development is so important, because these tough conversations, you got to understand yourself before you can start mentoring and guiding other people.
Well, I think a lot of self-improvement creates an opportunity where you feel more confident having those conversations, so they're not as difficult, you know. And you know, communication's the name of the game. We're always going to communicate. You know, I know Elon Musk is trying to create this chip you put in your brain so you don't have to talk anymore, but you know, it's communication's always going to be relevant.
Extremely important. Well, thank you guys. You can follow us at Dr. Alex A. Plains, or you can listen to us at Dr. Alex A. Plains, live stream with Dr. Alex A. Plains. Thank you so much.